Hey there everyone, it's Baka here. Welcome to another weekend workshop. Now today I'm going to do things just a little bit differently. We're not going to have a specific lesson on either writing or art or anything like that. What I want to talk to you guys about today is board games or tabletop games, however you want to call it. Now, tabletop gaming is something that I absolutely love. Some people might even call me addicted to it. I collect games, different types of games, but I don't get the chance that often to play them. I just don't have enough people who like to game that live near me. So I get to collect them, and then every now and then I can have one of my buddies come down and we can attempt to do a two-player version of that game. Now, most of the games that I like to play do start at the two-player stance. They'll have special rules for those, but they can go up to 4 players, 6 players, 8 players, and on and on and on. Now, some of my favorite games are Munchkin and any Munchkin-related things. I also really like the Small World series. I really like dice games for some reason. Games like Zombie Dice, Cthulhu Dice, even Farkle, um, which I have a slight addiction to on my phone. I also like games that try to break the rules of established gaming. These are games that will take a traditional idea like I guess you could call it the racetrack model of a game, where you start at the starting point and your goal is to get to the ending point before everybody else. But some games take this idea and they throw a wrench into it. Maybe they become a hybrid of games. They might take the ideas of, oh, I don't know. Well, let's take for account. Okay, now I can't think of any games off the top of my head that do this. But they can take other ideas from, say, role-playing games or miniatures or any number of type of games, and they can combine them. Or, say, take a card game, a PvP card game like Munchkin. You can throw dice game into that. I just happened to buy a game today called Warriors, which is a combination of a dice game and a card game. Now, the reason I'm talking about all this and why it's on the Weekend Workshop and not on the Wide World of Geek is because I am, in fact, designing my own tabletop game right now. I'm still in the planning stages, and the planning stages is, at least for me, going to be the really long, really arduous task, but it's a task that I can accomplish completely by myself. Now, board games and game design is something that I do teach to some of my dual credit classes. For those of you who don't know, dual credit classes are high school classes that have been approved by a local college, and that college gives them credit, the students credits for free, so they don't have to go and pay a fee like for an AP test or anything like that. So in one class, which is called digital design, we go through and we're able to do from start to finish, design a board game, and actually play this board game. And one of the criteria is it has to be playable, it has to be winnable. Now that does not mean it cannot be challenging. One game that was created 2 years ago is still a favorite of students from that class and from other classes who I've shown it to, because it is a simple racetrack game. You go from start to finish, but each time you roll the dice and you land, you have to pull a card from a specific stack. And the reason it's so much fun is because it's actually really difficult to win. You can land on that last square right before the finish and draw your card and head to the very beginning again. It has many more pitfall cards than it does blessing cards. So the kids love it. It's fun because it's, snatching victory or snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, if you will. Now, the game that I'm designing is definitely what I would call a hybrid game. I took elements from the different types of games that I love and have decided to put them all together in a way that works smoothly, has really easy to understand instructions, but it's still going to be really challenging. Now, there are different games out there. There are PvP games where you're playing against another person. There are tabletop role-playing games where you're a party and you have the one person who's narrating this whole thing create all the challenges for you. And you have different games that are, and these are much more rare, but they're co-op games. Games like Castle Panic really make you work as a team in order to get a clear-cut victory over an NPC type of villain or villainous army. And that is basically, that is the base premise for how this game that I'm designing is played. And I don't want to give away too many details because A, I don't want people to steal it. But for the gameplay action, it's a co-op game playing against an NPC enemy or enemies that follow very specific rules. And the way that is played is the way the fighting system is set up is very much like a classic turn-by-turn role-playing game style, such as you would in Dungeons & Dragons or even video games such as Final Fantasy. The board game itself, it will be on a board, so it's not a pencil and paper type of game, but it's going to be a shifting, changing board. It's going to be basically a labyrinth, a maze. I absolutely love mazes, and I finally, after years of searching, have found a book of mazes that you can do. I think I found this at a Books A Million or a Barnes & Noble, and it was the first time in years of searching that I actually found one without just getting mazes online. But the idea is that there's a base graph sort of board, and then you create the dungeon as you go. You have a start, and you do have to get to the finish. But you're going as a team, and each time you pull up a new square and you change your path, you face enemies, or you find items, or you face enemies and get an item. And the goal is, at the end of the game, you have to face the main monster of a dungeon. And you have to defeat this monster in order to finally exit the game and win. Now, you have to use a lot of strategy. Do you go as direct as you can to try to kill this thing with your base level skills and your base weaponry? Or do you kind of do a meandering path to allow you to gain better items, to gain better spells and potions, things like that? Things that will help you actually defeat the enemy in the end. For some of there will be 4 different main enemies. Some of these enemies have underlings that they send out to you at their very first start. They don't move. The main enemy just stays where he is and sends his minions out after you. So the longer you stay meandering around, the more chance these enemies have of building up, amassing up, and facing you all at once. So that can be fairly daunting. You might not even get to the end boss in that case. In some cases, there is just one end boss, and he's so tough you're going to have to build up your skills and your weaponry in order to face him and possibly defeat him. Now, it's going to be a fairly balanced system with your party. I believe I have 6 playable characters that have skills from being a general fighter, a tank, a ranged expert, a magic user, things along those lines. I'm using a lot of the classic tropes from fantasy, the different types of races and monsters and things you might encounter. There are some oddballs thrown in there. Some things may be taken from more modern stuff, from maybe some anime, things like that. But mostly it's classic fantasy style. Now, what I'm going to do with this workshop is I will update you guys on the progress of this game as it goes along. It won't be, the normal series where next week I'll have a new update, and etc. until the game's done, because honestly, I don't know when this game's going to be done. Currently, I'm working 2 different jobs, and Granted, I turned in my 2-week notice on my secondary job because I was losing money working there somehow. But soon I'll be down to one job, and I might get another job, I don't know. But that'll give me a little more free time that I can work on this. But I work a full-time job, and I work a very stressful job. So, while this is the first thing on my to-do list when I'm not working, it doesn't come first for me. So I will be continually working on this, going through all the planning. I'll update you guys a little on that. I want to find some artists to work with. I might do some of the art myself, but I know a few people who do role-playing games and fantasy art who are amazing. If I can get them to do this, it would be great. The ultimate goal is to get this game done or nearly done and then do a Kickstarter for it. Because I think it would be a really fun game. It would be a different gameplay every time you play it. You can draw monsters that you might not draw in any other game or in different orders. You will have to work together differently. What characters you choose to play as will change how the game is played. What end monster you choose to face will change the game. It's a very much a variable system. Now, once this game is done, if I'm able to actually gain some success with it, I do have other games in my brain rattling around there that I think would be equally, if not even more, fun to play. Some science fiction, some ultimate nerd out games, but this is something that I've suddenly got this great passion for doing. I went to Gen Con, I saw all the games, loved it, fueled it even more. Now I just got to get into gear, get all the planning done, the technical stuff worked out, and then start getting the art done. Now, I will at a later point give a basic workshop on the designing aspect of a game. How do you design a game? How do you go from start to finish with it? Not taking the post-production work, your game out to all that people, because I've still got to research some of that. But that's going to do it for this week's
Weekend Workshop. I will be back on Tuesday with another Wide World of Geek. Until then, guys, this is Baka, and I'll see you guys later.